On today's episode, Toughest Mudder Minnesota Recap with JahLisa James. This is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome to the world's toughest podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's world's toughest mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. My name is Will Hicks. Thank you for listening. You are listening to the number one rated OCR podcast in the world, according to Apple Podcasts and Amazon.com. Would you like to be a part of the Cool Kids Club? Leave the show a review on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or Stitcher, and you can be even cooler than you are right now. On today's show, we recap Toughest Mudder Central, held just outside Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Something I did not expect this weekend. I was up there for the race. I have mosquito bites literally all over my body. Now that it's been a couple days and the muscles don't hurt as much, I can really feel the bug bites starting to itch. So thanks for that, mosquito soda. Before we start, you can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching for World's Toughest Podcast. You can subscribe to our email newsletter by texting the word tough to the number 22828. And you can be a part of the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, and I will read it on a future episode. We are 8 reviews shy of 150 in the U.S. That's a long way to say we have 142. I am looking for 8 more reviews, fellas, ladies. Make today the day. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I would appreciate it. Also, be sure to check out the other podcasts on the OCR Report Network. Go to theocrreport.com. Let's talk some news. This past weekend was the third Toughest Mudder of 2019. Toughest Mudder Central was held in Oneka, Minnesota, just outside the Twin Cities. 307 men and women started the 12-hour race, with Matthew Hansen winning the men's race with 60 miles, and Corrine Colan winning for the women with 45 miles. Your top 5 men for Toughest Mudder Central are: in first place with 60 miles in 11 hours and 18 minutes, Matthew Hansen. In second place with 60 miles in 11 hours and 37 minutes, Evan Perperis. In third place with 50 miles in 10 hours and 40 minutes, Akash Garg. In fourth place with 50 miles in 10 hours and 49 minutes was John Donnelly. And in fifth place with 50 miles in 10 hours and 52 minutes, Michael Mole. Your top 5 women for Toughest Mudder Central are: in first place with 45 miles in 11 hours and 1 minute, Corrine Colan. In second place with 45 miles in 11 hours and 35 minutes, Jess Parker. In third place with 40 miles in 10 hours and 48 minutes, Shannon Fitzgerald. In fourth place with 40 miles in 11 hours and 7 minutes, Heather Olson. That is the OCR Report's own Heather Olson, Overcome and Run podcast host. Well done, Heather. And in fifth place with 40 miles in 11 hours and 22 minutes, Kelly Williams. In addition to the individual runners, there was also the 2-person team relay and the 4-person team relay categories. In the 2-person team relay, your top 3 teams at Toughest Mudder Central are: in first with 65 miles in 11 hours and 33 minutes, Team Tahoe's Toughest, Greg Waller and Elliot Reeb. In second with 55 miles in 11 hours and 1 minute was Team Untouchables, with Max Ledzinski and Chris McLeod. And in third with 55 miles in 11 hours and 53 minutes, they finished their last lap with 7 minutes to spare. Good job, guys. Team Bamfsob, with James Heflin and Darren Coons. BAMFSOB. That's Team Bamfsob. BAMF. BAMF. SOB. I'd imagine they're probably from Banff, Canada. And they miss Banff. So they cry about it. Banff sob. That's probably what that stands for. In the 4-person team relay category, your top 3 teams at Toughest Mudder are in first, with 50 miles in 11 hours and 25 minutes, International Divas. International Divas are Jack Patrick O'Reilly, Sarah Bjork, Chris McLaughlin, and TJ Szyminski. In second, with 50 miles in 11 hours and 44 minutes, was David versus Goliath. Team David versus Goliath are Eric Barsh, Nick Buden, Andy Dalsing, and Adam Kaiser. And in third, with 45 miles and 10 hours and 50 minutes, was Mid-Best Clydesdales. Mid-Best Clydesdales are Scott Sebastian, Nick Artis, Chris Betcher, and Jonathan Broadhacker. Chris Betcher was a previous guest of ours. He got 75 miles as a Clydesdale at World's Toughest Mudder. Congratulations to everyone who ran Toughest Mudder Central, and especially these podium winners. Well done. So I was out there this weekend, and I had a great time. It was just the right amount of miserable and just the right amount of fun. And I was plenty miserable. Since 2016, I have run World's Toughest Mudder with the same group of guys from school and work from the late 90s. We used to, I won't say live together. We were roommates down the hall from each other at school. This was the first time we were able to run Toughest Mudder together. Toward the end of the race, I was done, and I did not want to go out for another lap, but that's probably the biggest benefit of running with a team, is when one of you is done, the rest of them will pick you up. Like emotionally, but also like physically, like you're getting over the wall. So, and when someone else is done, you'll be there to pick them up. So I love running with a team. I highly recommend it. Technically, all the teams at Toughest are relay teams, but you don't have to relay. We, the 4 of us, we stay together the whole time. This is the only time of year we see each other. So we get caught up on our families and jobs and what's going on in each other's lives. Great time. Get your old college buddies together and make World's Toughest a thing for you guys. Rent a house, meet in Atlanta, get there a couple days early maybe, and bring the wives. They can work pit crew for you. Make it a thing. Special shout out to Team 2 Dymes and the whole DeMessage family. My team shared pit area and pit crew with them, which is to say that my team used their pit area and used their pit crew. So thank you, Kitten and crew. We're going to talk about this with JahLisa in a minute, but Tough Mudder did a real good job with almost everything out there. Obstacle difficulty was moderate to high. There were plenty of safety mats and water to fall onto as it's, underneath the obstacles at the appropriate spots. There was water to drink on course all night long, although it kind of turned into more of a find-your-own-cup deal toward the end of the race. Arctic Enema was cold the whole time, and it looked like I wasn't there much, but it looked like the pit area was hopping. They had a movie screen going. I don't know what movie they were playing. Someone let me know, willhicks@gmail.com. They had s'mores. They had a campfire. Well done, Team HQ. One area of improvement is, and I heard comments on afterwards, was volunteer staffing, especially toward the end of the race. Toughest Mudder is a 12-hour race, and the first wave of volunteers worked for 8 hours from the start of the race till 4 a.m. For that first 8 hours, I believe every obstacle had a volunteer. After 4, it was more hit and miss. Obstacles like Devil's Beard and Berlin Walls had no one there. A special shout out to the girls volunteering at Funky Monkey and Spread Eagle. They told me what happened, Guys, stop proposing to the volunteers. They're not going to marry you. The terrain at the venue reminded me of Atlanta from World's Toughest last year. It was much, much warmer than World's, obviously, but the actual landscape was Georgia-esque. There were rolling hills. There was cool stuff to look at. There was an old wooden bridge over one part of the course. And one time, toward the end of the race, we were on that part of the course, and there was a mom with her 2 kids. They were looking for her husband who was running the race. There was a sign on the side of the course that said something like "Blind Corner, Honk Here." And one of my teammates pointed it out to me, and for some reason, I was tired. I was so tired. I read "honk," and I thought, "Oh yeah." And I did that. I whistled out loud, and that mom whipped her head around so fast, and she stared at me, and she was probably 50 feet ahead of us. So I don't think she knew it was me because I was with my team, but she knew it was one of us. So when you accidentally catcall a woman in front of her kids, how do you make it better? What do you say that doesn't make it worse? Oh, no, ma'am. I was not whistling at you. See, there was a sign that said "honk here," and I'm tired, so instead of making a honk noise, I made a whistle noise, like at a construction site. Yeah, I don't think that would have helped. So overall, great race. We're going to talk more about it with JahLisa James in a minute. But very glad I flew out there, and well done, Team HQ. In other news, Tough Mudder announced in a press release that Kyle McLaughlin has been promoted from president to CEO. You'll remember Kyle was our guest a few episodes ago. Very happy for Kyle. Congratulations. Here's what jumped out to me about the press release. Will Dean and Guy Livingston were both quoted in the press release talking about how great 2019 has gone so far for Tough Mudder and how good a job Kyle has done. Dean and Livingston are the co-founders of Tough Mudder. And yes, 2019 is going great, and very happy for Kyle getting his promotion. But the last we heard publicly about Dean, he was allegedly being forced out of Tough Mudder by shareholders, and Livingston had just filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against those same shareholders, alleging they had violated contracts and owed him money. So if all you read was this press release, you would think the last 6 months were just peaches and cream over in Brooklyn. But anyway, congratulations to your new Tough Mudder CEO, Kyle McLaughlin. Well done. Not directly Tough Mudder related, but fans of elite obstacle course racing should pay attention to Spartan Race this weekend. On Saturday is the final race in the 2019 Spartan U.S. Championship Series. Reigning WTM Team Relay champions Ryan Atkins and Lindsey Webster will try and hold off the competition to secure their U.S. Championship wins. The reigning World's Toughest Mudder champion Rhea Coble will try and play spoiler on the mountainous terrain that will play to her strengths. For more on the Spartan race this weekend, check out the new episode of the OCR Report with myself and Jack Bauer breaking down the race. Available wherever podcasts are sold or downloaded for free. I saw a thread on the World's Toughest Community Board after the race talking about the finisher beer at Tough Mudder, Minnesota. Mitch Wenzel wrote that he enjoyed the course, but, quote, "Only one thing inspired my group of 6 new runners with me. Finisher beer. Would it be Dos Equis, Shock Top, Guinness? No, one 12-ounce can of Miller Lite. We wanted to cry. I don't care about the shirt or the headband. I want my beer. Instead, they gave me water to rinse off with." And then he posted a picture of himself dumping a can of Miller Lite on his head. So that's how Mitch Wenzel feels. I'm not a beer guy. But I know a lot of you are. And I know for some of you, it comes down to a quality versus quantity question. Like if you had to pick 6 craft beers from your local microbrew or 36 beers from Costco, what would you choose? Well, you don't have that choice anymore. I am sad to announce that Costco has discontinued sales of Kirkland Light. This is from The Takeout. Yesterday evening, while perusing my Costco's beer and wine aisle, I saw the usual suspects. The Kirkland Signature Craft Brewed Mixed Pack, Margarita Mix by the gallon, but one mainstay was missing. The staple Kirkland Signature Light Beer was nowhere to be found. I asked an assistant manager at my Costco about it, and he told me the beer had been discontinued nationwide. They're not making it anymore, he told me. Nowhere? Nowhere. Now, I know Mitch Hensel will not mourn the departure of Kirkland Light, but do you know who will miss it? Randy Kolpeck.
Kirkland Light. It's 11 a.m. somewhere.
Randy Kolpeck set up 56 boxes, empty boxes of Kirkland Light so he could jump through them like the Kool-Aid Man while he filmed his own commercials for Kirkland Light.
Life is swell with a Kirky L.
Evidently, Randy's dog likes Kirkland Light, too.
L.
Dogs drink water, Randy.
L.
Randy even wrote sales copy for Costco.
Kirkland Light. It's got 30% less calories, so you can drink twice as much.
Well, Randy, your loss is Mitch's gain. Sorry about that.
Kirkland Light, available in 48 packs where you buy your pants.
Before we talk with JahLisa James, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
Our first review comes from Joseph Carollo on Amazon. Joseph writes, if you want to prepare for WTM or Toughest, this is the podcast for you. 5 stars. Listening to past episodes of this show has helped me prepare for my first Toughest Mudder. The knowledge and experience the hosts and guests provide is second to none. This podcast is my favorite way to kill time at work. Thank you, Joseph, for writing that review. I'm glad you are killing time at work with our show. Although it sounds like you should probably be focusing more on work than just listening to the show. But I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for the review. If you would like to be a part of the show, like Joseph Carollo, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts also. Open the Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iPad and search for World's Toughest Podcast. Click our logo and then scroll down to click Write a Review, and I will read it on a future episode. Leaving a review is the number one way you can say, hey, thanks for the show. I appreciate it. If you don't have an iOS device, you can do the exact same thing on Amazon.com. JahLisa James has run Toughest Mudder 4 times and ran World's Toughest Mudder in the sub-freezing temperatures of Atlanta, Georgia in 2018. When she finished Toughest Mudder Central this past weekend, she also finished her 50th Tough Mudder event. It's time to talk with JahLisa James. Let's go to the phones. JahLisa James, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
JahLisa, we are a few days past Toughest Mudder, Minnesota. How do you feel?
Walking is still really hard. Everything is still sore, and my bruises, they've gotten some really good color to them.
How are you as far as mosquito bites?
I didn't start feeling them until about 24 hours later, and I don't have as many as I thought I was going to have. I ended up putting on my windbreaker to block some of them, so my legs are pretty covered, but my arms they're pretty good, which is really surprising.
You know, I ran the race also. I feel the same way. Like I didn't notice the mosquito bites until my muscles kind of stopped aching about 24 or 36 hours later.
Yes, exactly.
So how did you do on the course? What did you think of the course?
I actually enjoyed it. It was my first time being in Minnesota, and we were expecting the weather to be probably the opposite of what it was. It was going to show thunderstorms up until we got there, so it was surprisingly warm. And then randomly in the middle of the night, I got cold. So there were just lots of things that kept popping up that threw me for a loop, but I just kept having to push through and try to hit those goals. But it was a really good course. I liked it.
You know, other than the mosquitoes, it was almost ideal temperature or weather-wise.
Yes. Yeah, once I put on the windbreaker, and again, I mainly put it on for the mosquitoes, but it helped me with just all the water obstacles that were there, and the temperature didn't bother me at all. I stayed in compression pants, and I had a tank top on until I put on the windbreaker. And I finished the race with long sleeve just because the windbreaker was a little too heavy.
Tell me about your race. What happened? How did it go for you at the start of the race?
When I started the race, I was feeling really good. In my mind, I wanted to push for 30 miles. And when I got to about the halfway point, I realized 30 was a little bit unachievable. So it was a push and grind to get to 25 miles. And I ended up hitting that goal. So I wanted to patch. The most mileage I'd ever gotten at a toughest before was 20 miles. So I wanted to achieve a little bit more than what I had done before. And I'm really happy with my performance.
You've run several toughest mutters before, but this was your first 12-hour. What did you think of the 12-hour versus the 8-hour?
So I actually got to volunteer at the Philly toughest a couple months ago. And that's when I really realized how long 12 hours was. Because when I was just finishing my volunteer shift, there were so many people who were kind of in that mindset of like, there's so many hours left to go. But it didn't hit me until I got to that point of the halfway mark. And I was still on my third lap. And I realized there are so many more hours to go. It was daunting at that point. And knowing that there was no 30-minute buffer like we had previously, I had exactly 12 hours. It was really intimidating.
You know, not that 8 hours is short, but there's just something like when you do 2 or 3 laps, the end is in sight at an 8-hour race. At a 12-hour, it's like, oh, it's almost like Worlds. Like, oh man, we're just getting started.
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt.
The race started at 8 p.m. How did you do in the middle of the night, 1, 2 a.m.?
So I spend about 95% of the course by myself. And I mean, I've done a ton of races, before, and majority of them I spend by myself. So I didn't have that feeling of being alone or being lonesome, just because I've kind of trained myself to be used to it and getting to obstacles and figuring out how to do it on my own. But there were a few moments when I was getting to obstacles and I was praying that the people who were at Everest all night were still there, because I knew I couldn't do that by myself. And I was praying that when I got to Block Nest, somebody would come up behind me, because I could get over the first block on my own, but the second one, it rotated too much and I couldn't do it by myself. So I think that was kind of the biggest thing for me, is just hoping that I could have a little bit of time with somebody when I needed it. And even though it didn't feel like there were a ton of people who were on the course, it did feel like as soon as I needed somebody, they were there. And I was extremely thankful for that.
It's funny you mentioned those 2 obstacles. I don't know what it was about Everest this time. Maybe it's just because it was must complete. But it was a hard Everest, I thought.
Oh, it was extremely hard. Everest is one of those obstacles that, I got fear in my heart as soon as they said it was a must complete, because I've had 2 back surgeries. My most recent one was almost 2 years ago. So Everest is one of those things where if I don't know and I don't trust the people who are up there, I don't do it. So knowing that I was going to have to get up that obstacle every single time that I passed it, oh, my heart was beating. The first time I went up there, I almost cried. So that was definitely my struggle obstacle. Maybe not the most one that I struggled with, but in my mind, I was most intimidated by Everest every single lap.
I feel like we should give a special shout out to Francis Lackner and all the guys who were up there all night long.
Oh yeah, especially Ashley Russell. She is a beast. She was pulling everybody up, and Abby, those guys, they were amazing. Absolutely amazing being up there. Roy was up there. They were great.
You mentioned Block Ness Monster a minute ago. I don't know what it was about Block Ness, but it was hard to turn. It was filled with water. It felt more difficult than usual.
So the first one, like I said, I've been doing a lot of courses by myself of, various race capacities. So I've worked a lot on my upper body strength. So I was able to kind of muscle up the first Block Ness with no problem, like even if no one was in the water with me. But the second one just kept rotating. So I had to have either somebody hanging off the backside of it or stabilizing it at the bottom. But it was just so difficult. And I'm very happy that the water level wasn't high because I'm 5'6". So I wasn't feeling like I was treading water. So I was comfortable when I was in there. But that one was very difficult for me.
You talked about how you were alone for 95% of the course. 5% of that course, it seemed like you and I kept passing each other.
Oh, we were together so much on the course. It was a beautiful thing to see you and your team. You guys were great.
Every once in a while, I'd be like, I thought we were ahead of you. How did you, where did you come from? And just I don't know if we'd pass each other in the pit maybe, or if maybe one of us took a penalty, the other passed an obstacle, and then we'd pass each other again. But it seemed like for 2 or 3 hours, we'd see you almost all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think what would happen is because you were with a team of a few other people, I think you had the 4-person team, and I think an extra person with you. If an obstacle would take you guys a couple extra seconds because maybe you were helping each other on a wall, I was able just to get over on my own and just leave. So I think that's where a lot of our back and forth kept happening, just because you guys had more people to go through than I did. But it was amazing, especially when we got to the penalty on the gauntlet, and it was like, oh, hey, I'll hang out with you guys for a while. And it was just nice to have someone to talk to, and I wasn't by myself. And again, that's a little bit of humanity that you needed to have the push to keep moving.
You mentioned the gauntlet. That was interesting the way they did that. There were 4 sections to the gauntlet, and you did the obstacle all at once. But for each of those 4 sections you failed, you had to do 1 loop of the penalty, and it was on the honor system. They pretty much trusted you to keep your own score there.
Yes, and I used to be able to do rings really well, but over the past about year or so since the surgery, I've kind of lost some of my grip strength. So the back half of the gauntlet, I failed every time. So, obviously the first lap was a sprint lap. We didn't have to touch it, but laps 2, 3, and 4, I had to do those penalties. I had to do, it for the back half of the obstacle. And then on my very last lap, that 5th lap, I used my bracelet and handed it to the volunteer. And he goes, "You don't want to do your favorite obstacle?" And I was like, "No, I don't. Thank you." And that was probably one of my happiest moments on course, is not having to do the penalty for the gauntlet on that last lap.
The gauntlet and Mutterhorn, I saw piles of wristbands at both those obstacles.
There were so many wristbands. I was debating actually using it on Mutterhorn. And as I was going through the course, I was talking with a friend, and he goes, "Think about the penalty on the gauntlet, like how long that's going to take you." And when I thought about it, every time I got to Mutterhorn, I was like, okay, I'm exhausted getting up here, but it's taken me maybe 3 or 4 minutes just because I'm resting and it's at the end of the lap. And just balancing on the twinkle toes part of gauntlet, that's going to take me a while. And then having to do the penalties on the back half, I was like, it's probably a 2-minute longer, maybe even 3-minute longer on the gauntlet. And by that last lap, every second counted. I finished the course with about 7 minutes to spare. So using the penalty for the gauntlet was perfect.
So in the past, when it was an 8-hour race, they had a 30-minute buffer at the end. So you had until 8:30 in the morning to finish your last lap. With the 12-hour race, the race is over at 8 a.m. They clear the course at 8:01. So if you're not if you're not to the finish line by 7:59 or 8 o'clock, that last lap, all that work you did does not count for your final mileage total. What was your decision like in the pit heading out for your last lap? What time was that? What were you thinking as you left?
So I started, I went out. I only was able to pit after my 2nd lap and after my 3rd lap. When I was coming into the pit on my 4th lap, because I was actually sharing a pit spot with my friend Jessica Abbott, and her pit crew, he kind of saw me as I was coming in, and my bestie TJ was right there when I was coming in, And they were like, what do you need? And I was like, just take my windbreaker, put it at the pit. I don't have time to stop. So in my mind, from probably the middle of lap 4, I was calculating down to the minute. I had about 2.5 hours to finish my 4th lap and about 2 hours and 40 minutes to finish my 5th lap. So I didn't have time to pit between lap 4 and 5. And it was one of those decisions where I was telling TJ as I was getting ready to go out, I go, I'm going to cry whether I make it or I'm going to cry whether I don't make it, because it's hit or miss right now. I don't have time to talk. And I just kept walking, and I kind of jogged to the start line and I went. So I could have used that last pit to grab, a water or something, but there just wasn't any time. So my last pit was after lap 3.
Were you looking at the clock as you did your last lap?
I was looking at the clock from probably, maybe 5.5 hours before the finish. So I started really paying attention to it on my 4th lap. And then that 5th lap, I feel like every 10 seconds I was looking to see how much time do I have. Remembering, I was counting down how many obstacles were left. I was praying, like I said, that they were still at Everest to help me up. There were so many things that were going through my mind. And when I finally got to just past Pyramid Scheme, and I was like, it's so close to go. And I heard Jason, the announcer, saying there were 15 minutes, and I was coming up to EST, and I was like, there's 15 minutes. I can walk. I could crawl this, and I will make it. And I was talking to a friend who ran up to me, and he's like, you're doing so great. You look so great. And I was like, I just want to finish. And it was so hard. I thought Worlds was hard, but this weekend was harder than Worlds was for me.
Tell me about crossing the finish line.
I crossed the finish line and I fell into Carlo's arms, and I don't remember anything else. There's actually a video of me crossing the finish line. I hugged probably 5 or 6 people. I only remember crossing the finish line and falling into Carlo's arms, and that's it. I don't remember anyone else being there. I don't remember talking to anybody else. I'm so happy there's a video that I can kind of remember what happened, but it was I made it. I cannot believe that I made it. I hit my 25-mile patch, milestone that I was trying to go for, and it's over, and I just cried. And then as soon as they said, okay, this is where you can pick up your medal and your headband, and I was told that there were bagels, I forgot about my headband. I forgot about the medal, and all I wanted was that bagel and cream cheese. And I was the happiest once I had that. Then I was like, okay, I guess I'll get my medal now.
So you did World's Toughest in 2018. Worlds was 24 hours. This was 12 hours. How would you, and Worlds was very, very cold. How would you compare the two?
I wish I could say that I could compare the two, but I honestly feel like it was a completely different mindset for me. It was a completely different race. The weather did play a pretty big role in how things went, because in the first 12 hours at Worlds, I got 20 miles, and then my body got so cold, I ended up staying in the pit for several hours before I went back out for my last lap. I ended Worlds with 25 miles. And to be able to do 5 additional miles, official course miles, that my Garmin ended up saying 29 unofficial miles for the event. But being able to push for that extra 5 official miles in the same amount of time, that put it completely into a different perspective for me. And then also being on the course with just the temperature being different, and there was a lot less of a muddy feeling in Minnesota than it was in Atlanta. I feel like they were just vastly different to me.
You got to feel good, though. You did 25 miles in 12 hours this weekend. Last year you did 25 miles in 24 hours. So going into 2019
yes.
World stuff, it's hey, if I can do 25 and 12, I should be able to. You're right. The temperature is a huge, huge factor, but still, it's got to give you a little mental edge.
It is. Even though I do have I bought the bundle, the Toughest Worlds bundle. I have not officially signed up for Worlds yet. As I mentioned, I've had back surgery, so I will pretty much wait until maybe the end of October before I do register for Worlds. So it's still kind of up in the air. Just got to play how the rest of the season goes. But I can definitely see a potential for some really great things, at Worlds, pending I make it there and the rest of the season goes how it has gone so far.
So in addition to this being toughest mutter for you this weekend, it was also another big milestone. What milestone did you hit this weekend?
Toughest was my 50th event.
5-0. How does that feel?
5-0. That one it's a little unbelievable as well. If I look back onto last year at Toughest in Texas, that was my 25th event. So in about 14 months, I jumped up from event 25 to event 50. A lot of flight miles, a lot of hotels, a lot of travel woes. A lot of people know my stories about canceled flights and having to stay random places overnight, just trying to get home or get to events. So it's been a great journey. I've met some amazing people, and I've been to a lot of places that I never would have gone for any other reason had it not been to experience the courses and the dinners and everything with the amazing people that I've met, like you and like everybody else.
What's your favorite venue you've been to?
I really enjoyed New Orleans, especially that first year. It was like we had an Airbnb. There were a bunch of us who were in the house. We went out to Bourbon Street and, just had a bunch of fun when we were there. But then the venue had some of the mud mile. It was some of the thickest mud I'd ever been through. There was we finished the course just filthy, and it was so hard just trying to get through some of the trenches. And we have pictures where we're covered from head to toe, and we're making mud angels and everything. And there have been some courses that have come close, but I think that one will always remain one of my top favorites.
Was that the first race of the year in 2017, and it was that white creamy mud?
Yeah, it was the first race of 2017, and because there were some places that had just black tar mud. It was just sticky. There were, like I said, a swampy kind of section that you crossed through, and that was when they were doing the 2-loop format. And there was one section we went through, and the first time it was maybe calf deep on Saturday, and then we went back through it on that second loop, and it was maybe knee to thigh. Sunday morning, it was probably waist deep going through, and on that second loop, it was almost over my head. Just the amount of people who'd gone through and how the mud changed, and they had, I think it was trench warfare, where we got stuck in the tube trying to get out of it for 10 minutes, our team, because every time you try to pull yourself out, it literally sucked you back in. So those are the courses where you have the most fun. You see the most people slipping and falling, and absolutely amazing just experiences and memories.
So 50 is a nice round number. Do you have a thought for another nice round number you want to get to?
So I actually went out for Sunday Fun Day. So I'm at 51 right now. That was not a good decision to do Sunday Fun Day. I did the unholy grail, tough is tough, last year in Texas, and I only did 2/3 of it this past weekend. Yeah, that was not fun. If anybody who can do it and successfully walk the next day or even later that day, I am so proud of you, because for me, by the time I got off the course, I could barely move. But the way that my schedule is set up right now, I believe I'm actually going to finish the year at 66 events. I looked at it, and there were a couple more that I wanted to try to add, but it didn't make sense to try to push to get to 75. It was possible when I first looked at it, but I would have had to have changed where 50 was, because I really wanted 50 to be in Minnesota at toughest. So there's not really a goal for the next number. 75, if I hit it, great. If I don't hit it, great. I've had really great experiences so far with everybody. So I'm content wherever I end up this year, and, wherever my Tough Mudder journey takes me.
What would you say to somebody who is thinking about signing up for Toughest Mudder?
It is an experience that it's so hard to explain, but once you get there and once you see what you can do, it's absolutely amazing. If you've never run overnight or used a headlamp, if you've never had to combat with some obstacles by yourself or only having one other person, because on a regular Mudder course, you're probably going to have at any given time, 10, 15 people who are going to be coming up within the next, minute or so. Sometimes at Toughest Mudder, you are literally by yourself. So it puts you in a completely different mindset, and it helps you to know what you're made of. And I definitely recommend anybody who wants to have that challenge, definitely look at a Toughest event and, put Worlds on your bucket list. If it's not for this year, then for next year.
JahLisa, any last thoughts on Toughest Mudder, Minnesota?
I am my heart is full. I'm so happy that the weekend ended with no injuries. Like, I've gotten injured at events before, and it was just an amazing, and I know I keep saying that word, but it was an amazing experience to see people hit their milestones that they wanted to hit, and have a lot of first timers go out there, and just, for myself, first time going to Minnesota, just being able to, check out some of the sites being there and see what Tough Mudder has done for the 12-hour events. I'm just really excited about it, where they're going. The event was great, and I got to hang out with you off and on for a couple hours. So, that's a win all around.
Yeah, very exciting, I'm sure.
Hey, we only really get to hang out at Toughest events. That's where I met you 2 years ago. So
that's true.
I will take our hangout to
Atlanta, right?
Atlanta 2017. That's where I met you, and we kind of had that back and forth. So it's our thing. We have to continue doing it. I love it.
JahLisa, how can people follow you on social media?
The best way to follow me is on Instagram. My Instagram is @BlackLivesMudder, and it's an open public account. If you follow me, I follow back.
JahLisa James, thanks much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and it was great talking to you.
Special thanks to JahLisa James for joining us on this episode. Well done, JahLisa. It was good to see so many of you in Minnesota. On my last lap at Cage Crawl, my team said something to me, and the volunteer at Cage Crawl, heard it. And when I got out, she said, "Are you really Will Hicks?" And I said, yeah, I am. And she said her boyfriend loves the podcast and makes her listen to it all the time. So, good job, boyfriend. Way to be. I did not get her name at Cage Crawl or the boyfriend's name. Boyfriend, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts so I can shout you out properly. But I will tell you what, when she said, "Are you really Will Hicks?" Man, I floated on that for the rest of the lap, all the way back to the pit area. You are too kind. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.